Welcome back to Beautiful Work, Beautiful Life with Laurel and Laurel. We are so happy to be introducing season 3 to you in this episode. So let's begin with saying hi to Laurel today. Laurel, how are you today?
I'm well. How are you today?
I'm really well. I'm excited. So one of the first new things about our season is that we have new microphones. So if you're a regular listener and you like our microphones, let us know because we want to know if you can tell a difference, right?
And we should tell them, our listeners, that we have microphones because of some listener feedback.
Yes.
And it really was great feedback for us to hear how we are being received by our listeners. And so I just want to encourage our listeners, whether it's our sound, our topics, anything, any feedback that you have for us would be so welcome.
Oh, we so welcome any feedback. We welcome questions. Laurel, I was thinking, I wanted to let listeners know a little bit, if you're in the podcasting world, you kind of know this, but generally speaking, a lot of recording goes on ahead of time. So Laurel and I are, recording this a couple months ahead of when it's actually going to air. But, it would be fun sometime to do a couple live episodes and have some listeners come in and maybe ask some questions or something like that. So I would love to know how listeners feel about that, if they'd have any interest in us venturing into that territory, because that would be new territory for us too.
That would be so much fun. Beautiful Work, Beautiful Life live.
Yes. I like that.
Yeah.
So Laurel, here we are in season 3. We begin our 3rd year together as friends, as co-hosts in the podcast, and as bringing forth content in this inner work or beautiful work that we're inviting people in to do and to really enliven their life and transform their lives in the ways that they really want to. This inner work. We call this our pathway to creating the life, your beautiful life. And season 3 is going to be all about deepening your beautiful work. And we have quite a lineup for you.
Oh, it's going to be a good year.
It is.
And I love, just the way that our podcast has evolved, where we've introduced the inner work and now here we are in the deepening.
Yeah. It's really lovely. And for those of you that might be new to the podcast, you have 2 years worth of episodes to go back and check out as you wish. The first year, if you go right back to the beginning, we have re-aired our very first episode 3 times. So you kind of get a sense of, if you listen to that one, which was just delivered in July again, and you come back and you listen to this, you can kind of hear, Laurel and I evolving in our relationship and getting to know one another and getting to bring forth, this information really more readily and more easily through our connection and through our ability to speak into each topic. And so it's kind of fun to see the growth and the expansion of the podcast itself. But the very first season was really about awakening to your beautiful work. And so our topics were really kind of hitting into, how do you wake up to, you have some beautiful work to do, and what are you going to do about it when something comes crossing your path, right? So we spoke into that a lot. And then our second season was living into the beautiful work. So allowing yourself to really embrace this quality of life of living with inner work on the horizon all the time, knowing that it can be there and that it becomes the opportunity to really liberate you in so many ways. I guess is a great way to say it. How about?
Yes.
What do you think,
Laura?
Yeah.
I think it was such a sweet reminder of even though sometimes we want to resist the inner work, living the inner work was just an invitation to really be open to it. Know that it's there for you. Yeah. Great part of the self-discovery journey.
Definitely. And when resistance comes up, as we spoke into in at least 1 or 2 shows during the season, it is one of the vital places to take a pause and really look at, like, there's so much juicy information and resistance for us around what's going on internally. So go back and check out those episodes for sure. You're going to get a lot out of those. So as we begin our season of deepening your beautiful work. Our first month, we're going to be speaking into your internal GPS versus outside guidance.
Mm-hmm.
Laurel, where would you like to begin on this topic? I feel like that's on our topic of the show today, because we're going to go one more place with you all today before we leave you with this introductory episode. But let's just kind of speak into that topic a little bit, and maybe why we're going there right from the get go here in season 3.
That inner GPS, right? It's interesting because I I think, and I've experienced that when I was in that awakening to the inner work stage, my inner GPS was almost silenced before that, right? Because of the way, whether it's how I was conditioned, how I was brought up, my own life experience, my nervous system, and we'll talk more about nervous system this season, keeping me safe. But my inner GPS, or my inner voice, my intuition, was really dull.
Yeah.
And so I love that here we are in season 3 talking, we're diving right into this, because every human on this planet has an inner GPS, inner voice, intuition. And oftentimes when we think about inner voice, we're thinking about the inner critic, right?
Right.
But I'm talking intuition. It's our deep knowing, and how to tap into that. It takes trust and belief, but it is really good.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up the topic of inner critic and the inner voice, because we are actually going to do an episode on that for everybody who's checking in and wants to know what's upcoming this month. That's going to be one of our topics, because our inner critic usually becomes our enemy, and we don't really know what to do with it. We don't like it, and yet we almost habitually reinforce it being there without our own knowingness about that. And so we're going to really speak into how to work with that in an unusual, paradoxical kind of way. So we'll save that. We won't go any farther with that. But I love that we're going to speak into that, because I think that's so important. And the inner critic, right, can completely throw off our inner GPS.
Right. Yeah. So what about you? What do you think about this inner GPS?
I know. I am so glad that we're kicking off the season here, because I too, at the beginning of my beautiful work, had lost my inner GPS, and yet some part of me from the very early stages of my life knew I had a pretty good one, and thankfully, I believed myself, and for whatever reason, I had enough positive events in my life, or enough stability in my life, that I was able to trust that it was there, and that when the right time came in my life to reconnect with it, it wasn't a troubled relationship. I just kind of fell back into it pretty readily. And then it was a matter of, building the muscle of tuning into it and learning how does it speak to me, and, all that kind of stuff. So, for most of us, I just think that we are groomed mostly, right? And I think this is just a natural part. There's nothing good, bad, right, wrong about any of this that we're talking about today. It just is a reality of being a human in the world and living in societies. We are going to be groomed to be society acceptable. And so depending on what society you live in, it's going to be look differently, right?
Of course. And that, being within a community, within a society, I mean, we've talked about this before. We have a human need for belonging.
Yeah.
Right. And so how can you balance? How can you receive information from that, the outer world?
Yeah.
And how can you balance it with your inner GPS?
Yeah.
And I think that's what, a situation that it's and both, or both and, right?
Yes.
It's
Yes.
not either
Exactly.
or.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, I'll be the first to admit, and we know this as coaches, we all have our blind spots, right?
Yep.
And
Absolutely.
so I tend to think about my inner GPS really being my intuition and my heart, and not my head.
Yep.
Um, And I think that, the cognitive thinking is the place that needs outside, not validation, but confirmation.
Right,
Right.
right, right. And
And
negotiation sometimes even.
that's
Right.
right. Yep.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
Because, I have blind spots. I don't see
Yeah.
the world or myself the way that other people may. And
Right.
so it is that confirmation, negotiation, even education, right? It's
Yeah.
learning from that outer society, and
Yeah.
then letting the inner GPS um digest all of that and
Mm-hmm.
make sense of it, and be the then really um the guide.
Yeah, right, right. I was thinking just to give like a tiny example. This goes back to very early in my beautiful work when I was in my 30s, and I had reconnected with work life, and was working with a lot of women in a women's center, and I ended up having like developing one of my best friendships in life through that place. But she at one point told me that some of the women in the center found me intimidating. Now, I am number one, an introvert. Number two, I'm so afraid of hurting people's feelings. I can't even imagine doing anything like that on purpose. And number three, I think of myself as kind of a timid gal. I always saw myself that way. And so when I got feedback that I was intimidating, it really had to make me it invited me to look at how are other people perceiving me and what could be intimidating in my personality or in the way I present myself or in the way that I speak. Like it allowed me to just have a different perspective on how other people might experience my energy myself. And so it doesn't make it right or wrong or good or bad. Again, I mean, this is all information, and that is information that I never would have gotten to on my own
Yes.
because my internal self had no idea that anybody would perceive me that way. Because I feel like I'm just a little afraid cat. At that point, I was
Yeah.
like, I'm just a nice little girl. I'm just being a nice person. So yeah, it was
Yes.
very strange and a
It,
really interesting time. Yeah,
and that's a great example of what a blind spot is, right?
yeah, exactly,
I
exactly.
love that. Thank you for sharing that
Yeah.
example.
Yeah. So, Laurel, here we are,
Yes.
our very first episode. And our very first episode, I want to introduce it because I want to take a few minutes to speak into it before we actually have
Yes.
to go away for the week, right?
Yes.
So, our very first invitation to you for deepening your beautiful work is we are giving you a permission slip to not fit in.
I love this permission slip.
I do too.
Imagine if we had been given this when we were 4 years old.
I know, I know. And I guess maybe some parents are able to do that with their children, and yet I still think that peer thing can be really tricky to navigate those waters. So it's hard to, get out on the other side of teenagehood, not scarred by, having to fit in or wanting to fit
Yes.
in or needing to fit in or whatever the right
Yes.
words are for you, verbs. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I do think, for us, it probably was teenage years.
Mhm.
But I think that today it happens much earlier.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so maybe our experience is different than others, and probably is. But it's true that
Yeah.
we want to fit in, again, that sense of belonging, that, we want to be part of something bigger.
Yeah.
And especially as we're learning how to be part of something bigger,
Mhm.
we need to, or maybe we decide we are going to play by the unspoken rules, and we're going to try to fit in. So I love that we can give our listeners permission to not fit in, and with the reminder that there's so many places to fit in, that you do not have to mold yourself to fit in to every place.
Absolutely. Or
Right.
any specific place,
That's
right?
right.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
this is where the internal GPS becomes so important. I think that when you're doing your inner work, as you begin to explore the inner territory and the inner terrain, and you're starting to get to know yourself in a better way, in a more deep and essential way, it at some point, you really want to find your tribe, your people, your group, your safe place, your safe space to explore more and to really be witnessed in your true self. And so in that place, you probably will feel like you fit in, right?
Yes.
And yet it happens in a way that feels natural. It's not forced. And it comes from this sense of, this is who I really am. And these people around me get me. And it's okay to be me right here, right now.
Yes.
And then we're able to take that into other spaces where we might not feel like we fit in, but we don't really mind because we know we could fit in other places, and we have that sense of belonging in the world, right? Yeah.
Yes. And I think that's such a good a tool, right? When you think about when you are wherever you are within a group or with one other person, it could be lots of people or just one. You
Right.
know, is it ease to be yourself, right? Is it easy, right? Is there, and comfort's not the right word, but the safety, does it come easy? Does it feel good? Because that really is the barometer of, in are you fitting in, or do you have to work to fit in if it doesn't feel easy,
Yeah.
right? Like, and I love this, bringing it back to our internal GPS, because our body knows. And if we listen to our body, we can really sense if there's ease or if there's difficulty, right?
Yeah.
And it is interesting because it does take a little bit of time to really figure out. I mean, I'm a person, I love meeting new people. And some of the people I meet after instantaneously, I love being with people um in that moment of meeting. And then I eventually realize that who are my tribe and who's not.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't mean that I um didn't enjoy the experience of meeting them or maybe even learning more about them. Um, and it sounds, here I am speaking it out loud. We talk about this, right? That we speak from the heart. It's raw and real, unscripted. So
Absolutely.
here it
Here it
comes. I'm going to
comes.
say, if I choose that someone is really not for me, you know, I no longer feel bad about that, where years ago I would have felt bad about that.
Yeah.
But I've been able to develop that attitude or belief that I'm not for everyone and everyone is not for me. And I know that by listening to my body and sensing whether relationships or other people are a good fit for me.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and I'm a good fit for them. Right.
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
So we have the tools right here in us to
Oh,
navigate that.
I know. And to be able to come back and really be fully present in your body. This, we've done a little bit of speaking into embodiment. I think we had one episode on it, maybe last season, Laurel. Do you remember? I think we did
We did.
some embodiment work. And I'm sure that we'll hit it in this season as well, beginning today. But that sense of, really being fully present in your body, inhabiting your body in a very conscious way, right, is the difference between sitting in a chair and going about your business and never even noticing that your feet are touching the floor versus I can bring my consciousness throughout my whole body in any moment and notice, oh, my feet are touching the floor right now. And I can feel them on the floor, right? I can feel the way my knees are bent or where they're bent. I can feel how the back of the chair hits my legs. Like this is being fully in the body and being able to gather up and notice the sensations that are happening so that you can use your inner world as your internal GPS.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that is a wonderful way to learn how to not simply let it be your cognitive head, your thinking,
Yeah.
to as your guide, right?
Right, right, right.
And there's a disconnect sometimes. I mean, I have I've I still practice not letting my head be, the number one driver.
Yeah,
Um, and it's not easy, but you know, tapping into your body is the way that I've been able to do that.
yeah, me too, me too.
Yeah.
And I will say that I have never been sorry when I followed my body direction ever. I don't remember ever, not one time. I cannot come up with one time. I can come with many when I followed my head directions,
That's right.
but not necessarily when I was, listening to my body. It's always
Yeah.
gone well.
And I can think of many, not just my listening to my head, but listening to the outside world that
Yes,
that I prioritize over my own sensing, right?
yes,
And
yes,
so I love this with it. Here we are in this, maybe it's a journaling prompt that's coming out here is
yes,
when, think about times in your life that you've ignored your body's wisdom and it didn't play out the way it should have. Or, when you have listened to your body's wisdom and whether or not it played out well or not.
yes, yes. This is great. Um, I want to say just a little quick caveat here, and maybe this would be a great journaling prompt for some people, depending on what they know about themselves. But as we talk about this internal knowing and our GPS system and our intuition and the physical body sensations of how we experience that, this is different than what it feels like to have a food craving or a sudden urge to I don't know, experiencing something adventurous. I mean, there's some things here that we're talking about that our body wants to do or is habituated into our body or comes from the nervous system and isn't necessarily that internal GPS that we're talking about, or it's an internal GPS maybe gone a little haywire. Yeah. So we'll speak into that a little bit more too when we talk about the nervous system, but I just wanted to pop that out there.
Yes.
And that might be a good journaling prompt, I think, like think about, or just take a week where you pay attention. Maybe it's this week, and you pay attention to what is your body, what do you think your body's trying to get you to do? Right. Where is your internal GPS right now? Do you feel connected with your intuition? Did you have an intuitive moment? What was it? Write it down, say it out loud, right? To begin to just acknowledge and create a better connection with your internal experience. Yeah.
Yes. And, I also want to give our listeners permission that if you have not been in a practice of really connecting with your body, perhaps you may not be feeling the sensation that we're talking about, right?
Yeah. Yes.
And so how can you start feeling the sensations of your body? I think we've touched on a few, you know, noticing your body when you're sitting in a chair and all the various pieces and parts of your body,
Yeah.
right? And then even, start to notice the other signs that your body gives you, you know, signs of hunger, signs of anxiousness, or signs of comfort. Like, what are all those signs, those sensations that your body brings to you? Um, and that, I think, is a great way to start to tap into recognizing what your body is saying. And for me, it was a good way of learning my intuition, right?
Yeah.
I
That's
mean,
great.
I think I know this. There was a time in my life where I really was not in touch with my own heartbeat. I
Mm-hmm.
was so I was not living in my body.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that happens to a lot of people. And
Yeah.
so I had to really start to work at, I know I have a heart in here. How can I better feel that heart beating? And really learn how to feel the sensations of my body.
Yeah.
And I can tell at that time, my intuition, when my intuition was speaking, it was loud because I was not sensing it, and I think we've talked about this on past episodes. My intuition came loud as a voice,
Yeah.
that I knew wasn't my own thought.
Yeah.
And so I think about that I was so out of touch with my body's wisdom that I had to have a loud voice in my head
Yeah. Yeah.
as my direction.
Right.
That's changed. I don't hear that loud voice very often anymore,
Yeah.
because I really try to pay attention to my body's wisdom.
Yeah. It's practice.
Yeah.
Right, Laurel? I
Yeah.
mean, and I would say, and it's like in this particular arena that we're talking about, it's practicing, noticing, right? Maybe putting a timer on your clock every hour and just sitting and noticing internally what's going on, right? Until it starts to be more habitual that you're actually tuning in. And also you grow your comfort zone, because at the beginning, if you're very disconnected with your body and the physical sensations, at the beginning, it can feel a little disorienting, a little disconcerting, a little uncomfortable, so you need to grow your comfort zone in the reconnecting experience sometimes, and that's okay.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, Laurel. So I would say, as we wrap up here, I would love to come back to our permission slip to not fit in.
Yes.
And offer up some journaling questions on that. So let's just do a little back and forth and give them a few journaling questions. Anyone pop in right away for you? Yeah.
I think one of the things that came to me is, where do you want to fit in? Right? Because sometimes we get to learn or discover what we don't want or what isn't for us by focusing on what we do want. Right?
Yeah.
And so where is it that you want to fit in? And I would say, why?
Yeah. That's
Right?
great. I love the why question with that one. It came up right away for me too.
Right.
So yeah, that's perfect.
And maybe even a step further of, where's your opportunity for that tribe?
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
then if I can just bring it back to, what comes from that, where are you now that you have some discomfort, obligation, external reason why you are in that belongingness with a group or even a person,
Yeah. Or
and
family.
so, right,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so where are you fitting in? And you know that it's work for you.
Yeah. Right. Right. Work. I was thinking about paying attention to when you're in a group setting or in a space, right? What are your habits of making an attempt to fit in rather than just simply sitting back and being yourself there, right?
Yes.
To start to discern what those behaviors might be. And even sometimes it's body language, right? So just to begin to notice some of those habits and patterns of habitual fitting in. Like I have one client that I work with. I love her. She's such a powerhouse. But one of the things that we worked on over time was habitually smiling really big, right? And it was her way of weakening her intimidation factor because she's a very powerful person. And it was also a way of managing the situation, right? And kind of keeping everything friendly or whatever. And so just to notice that you have this habit, right? And to start to pay attention to why are you using it? And if you're not doing it, what does it feel like, right? That's a great little example for people.
Yes. And that's what I mean when I said, where are you? Where are you? And it's work, right? That
Yeah.
you have to try. You have to consciously attempt something,
Yeah.
some behavior or pattern. It's interesting. I have a client as well who, her experience was that she would say yes to things, social activities primarily, that she really didn't want to do, but she was doing them because she didn't want to disappoint other people. And in her experience, as we worked through this together, that she would become increasingly cranky, grouchy leading up to it, and then didn't enjoy the experience. And so, really learning that, again, it might be a behavior when you're in a setting, but it might be, I'll say, moods, right? Leading up to something that you are obligated to do. And how do you feel about that? Can that be a messenger for you?
Ooh, good one. Good one. That's great. Noticing as you go into every experience. Am I going into it with a sense of ease and comfort and grace and joy, or am I going into it with crankiness, resistance, resentment, right? And
all of that.
Ooh, what's going on there, right? Yeah,
right.
Yeah, those great time for journaling. Well, Laurel, I think we should probably head out. We've probably been on longer than we intended to, but we couldn't wait to just come in and introduce our new season and our new month to our listeners and reconnect and invite our listeners to remember too, for us, it's great if you just leave us a little comment right wherever you're listening. Give us a little rating, whatever is good, so that we can get some feedback, and also so that other listeners can find us. That's how people find, new podcasts and new voices and new information. So
yes,
we love that.
I would like to invite our listeners also that if they need help or support as they are really doing their inner work and discovering who they are, that we are here. We work with clients who experience many of the things that we talk about on our podcast.
Absolutely. Both of us we're with clients, and we will just going to put it out there because eventually we will be letting you know that we'll be having a beautiful work, beautiful life retreat. And it may be as soon as this fall. And if it doesn't happen this fall, we'll be looking at next spring, and everyone is invited to join us.
Oh, it's going to be great.
I know. It's going to be super beautiful.
See, we have so much to share and to talk about. Yes. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Off we go, and we'll see you next week on Beautiful Work, Beautiful Life. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.